Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your host, Courtney Anderson. Today we have a show that is part of our Myth Warriors series. And of course, the Myth Warriors series is where you and I, we don our battle gear. We are armored. We are ready to get out there and to fight, to defend ourselves. And we're going on offensive as a myth warrior. Initially, what we're going to do is attack, figuratively, a concept or idea that's out there, and we're going to try to determine, is this something that's accurate and credible, something that I should, potentially accept as valid in my life and make decisions based on, or is it something that might in fact be a fallacy, a myth, a lie even? So our specific show episode title today is, What Does Not Kill Me Makes Me Stronger. And that's it. What we're trying to determine is that concept, is that idea, is it a myth? Is it a myth? Is it a falsehood? Is it a lie, an untruth, a fallacy? That what does not kill me makes me stronger? Or is it more likely actually accurate? Is it something that we might actually have that might be valid in our lives and something that we might ascribe to as we make decisions? And always we are trying to determine what is holding us back from surpassing our goals. And we're also focused on how can we be joyful, how can we practice our professional activities while remaining joyful. So how do we do that? Unless we have a good idea what's going on in life. Is this idea accurate? Is this idea a lie? We don't know. We've got to don our warrior outfit, or uniform, and we've got to get out there and find out, investigate, see what's going on. So this concept of what does not kill me makes me stronger, to the best of my understanding, is derived, at least in the modern culture, utilization of it from some would call the philosopher, but if nothing else, certainly the thinker, Friedrich Nietzsche, and was from a work that was written in 1888 by him, published the following year in 1889. And so this idea here is, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. We see that in really in pop modern culture. I certainly, as I was putting together the show notes for today, was reminded, certainly there was this concept has been in many different types of popular media, but in recent times in popular music. The popular artist Kelly Clarkson, sort of known as a popular music or pop artist, certainly had music talking whatever doesn't kill me makes me stronger. And then also Kanye West, which is a hip-hop artist. So we see this out here in popular culture. If Kanye West and Kelly Clarkson are talking about it, in addition, of course, to many other more trying to find the right word, academic approaches, certainly in philosophy, in lots of different areas of academic research and analysis. But I'm just throwing it out there for people who aren't familiar with the origins of this idea and maybe only heard about it in a pop song. It actually comes from, certainly we could agree, at least someone who's known for their thoughts, and that certainly is what Nietzsche is known for. Now, whether or not what your personal interpretation is of his thoughts, you certainly can't deny that for one person who lived a relatively short time, he had a lot of ideas that he sort of put forward into the world, and that all this time later, relatively speaking, in terms of the human lifespan, at least these concepts have sort of permeated into popular culture. So the beginning of this, I put in the show notes just a link to sort of a Stanford University sort of short note version if you've not ever heard of this writer, thinker. He was a professor, Nietzsche. Then read up on him, because it's always great as we go along our journey in life to try to understand where do ideas come from. And I think it's really great when you can sort of start to connect the dots and see, this something that this person did or wrote or discovered or proposed is now been sort of utilized in a different generation in a different part of the world, and it's neat. And the other thing I think is always interesting when we kind of do shows like this, and I've done a couple of them, and we'll continue to do more, is, there's sort of such an, wow, depending on who you are, where you live, and your age, and your, culture, and your family background, and your experiences, we all have such a different expectation of what we sort of think is basic knowledge. So there are many people who would say, oh my gosh, who didn't know, where this quote originally, came from, and who wouldn't have already, been familiar with the work of Nietzsche? Well, lots of people aren't. On the other hand, I mentioned, some of the more recent popular music artists who've used a similar sentiment in their music, whether it's a Kanye West or a Kelly Clarkson, and there are others, and people who would say, well, who are they? And other people would say, well, how do you not know this? So I think part of what sometimes holds us back in life from being able, I think, to learn from each other is, one, we're not willing to sort of go outside of our comfort zone, and we sort of think, well, whatever our life experience is and whatever our knowledge base is sort of what's normal. And then we sort of make assumptions when we interact with other people, we read about other people, and we think, well, how do they not know that? Well, because they don't. There are things they know that you don't know. So whenever I put together the shows, I'm not, these are for sort of general consumption. So I try to do, what I can to not just sort of make references and not either address it or put a link or try to do some sort of even nominal explanation. I do this in programs too, in presentations, keynotes, and speeches, and I've actually had people at times get frustrated with me and say, why are you telling us this? You think you need to explain who some of these people are or some of the things that you're talking about? What do you think I am, stupid? Are you talking down to me? No, it's the exact opposite. It's because especially, the larger the room and the more diverse the audience, not everybody has the same experience. Not everybody's read the same things or experienced the same things. And I know for myself as an audience member, I always get frustrated when I'm, sitting in an audience and somebody starts talking about something. And I'll give you a real easy, concrete example. A lot of people use sports stories and metaphors when they're giving, sort of presentations and keynote speeches, which is fine and great. The challenge is they make the assumption that everybody in the room knows all of the terminology and understands all of the rules of that individual sport. And I've sat in, I can't tell you how many of these types of programs where I'm sitting there and the person's telling this really elaborate, it seems really interesting story, but they're using it through this sort of sports terminology and language, but because I don't know the sporting terms, I don't get it. And so what would have been really helpful is if the person who was speaking didn't make the assumption that everybody in that room, plays golf, or everybody in that room, plays cricket, or everybody in that room, plays, baseball, everybody in that room plays, American football, because you make that assumption, and unless you're at an event where literally it's like a room of people that, hey, we're all, professional golfers, well then of course you use the terminology. But if it's more of a general audience, then don't make these assumptions. And what I'm making the argument here is that it's the same thing with these types of programs or anything else in life. I'd rather spend a few minutes trying to explain, at least generally what something is, or, put in a link to some other resources, than to not do that and have people sit there who don't understand the story and don't get the point. So that's why I do that. It's never for anything other than I've been on the other end of this, sitting somewhere or listening to something or watching something and thinking I have not a clue what they're talking about. That doesn't mean I'm the largest idiot on the planet. It just means, hey, I don't play that sport, or I've never, I don't know the terminology about that thing because I don't do it. That doesn't make me a horrible person. It's just the reality. So when we talk about this quote, that's our show basis, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Part of why we do this at the beginning is when we do Myth Warriors, especially when we get the content from a quote. We just did one of these recently on an American politician, Barbara Jordan. We explain who that is a little bit, and we put some links in the show notes, because not everybody knows, and that's awesome. If everybody in the world knew everything and it was all identical, we just all knew the same sports, we all read the same books, we all studied the same classes, first of all, it would be an incredibly boring world, and secondly, it would mean there would be a very limited body of knowledge and diversity. So that's why we do this in this program and all the other programs I do. I put these information in that may seem a bit silly to people who think, well, who doesn't know that? Duh. but not everybody knows the same thing. So I've been in the room where I don't know what's going on, and I would have appreciated if somebody had taken just a little bit of time to kind of clue me in or explain what the terminology in a way that everybody could relate. So the idea here is that I'm going through my life, and things happen. Some things happen very early in life. I don't even remember when it happened. It might have happened when I was a very young child, maybe even an infant. But as I'm moving through life, I'm aware of things. Things are happening. It's happening. Look at that. Now I'm getting older. Now I'm much more aware of it. My memory is recording that this thing is happening. It's happening. And so the idea here is these things happen, but if it doesn't kill me, right, which is somewhat obvious, at least, well, let me stop there. Whenever we're talking about, philosophy and some of these ideas, it can become actually, not obvious, but let's just be very literal. Let's be literal in terms of killing me in a literal physical manifestation of my human organs as I'm existing as an independent entity, meaning I'm not on a breathing machine, but I'm independently breathing, I'm independently thinking, I'm independently able to maintain sort of my bodily function. So we're going to call that alive. And then we're going to come up with this idea that if something doesn't kill me, meaning I'm literally not dead, right? So by death, my body function ceased to continue unassisted. So I'm not able to continue breathing, right? My heart's not able to continue pumping. At some point, then my whole sort of physical body will shut down. We're going to use that as death. So I'm not getting into sort of a philosophical or spiritual angle at all. I'm just talking about in the dimension as I understand it in the person that I am. If this body stops, I'm dead. Looking at it from that perspective, the idea that we're looking at to see, is it a myth or is it something that's really accurate, something that perhaps we can go ahead and make decisions in our life based on. The idea here is if I'm not dead, right, it didn't kill me, then I'm stronger. And again, we're going to use sort of a very kind of common idea of stronger, stronger, tougher, more resilient, longer lasting, able to handle, stress better. We're going to just use that strength. So the idea here is whatever it is, that thing, okay, it didn't kill me, which I would know because then I wouldn't be thinking and breathing and be dead, at least in this physical sense. But so I'm not dead. I'm aware of that because I'm able to breathe and talk and maintain my human interaction in the body as I know it. And the idea here is that, hey, I guess potentially there's a benefit to whatever these things are that happen because I'm stronger. Look at that. So usually we think about this in the context of something negative happening. We don't normally think, it didn't kill me, right? I had an awesome birthday party. I'm not dead. I'm just better. I'm stronger. Or, I got the greatest promotion at work. Yay! I'm not dead, and it's made me stronger. We don't usually associate this concept, whether it's from the original author's perspective or from different interpretations in other parts of pop culture or other philosophers and other scholars. We don't usually think about this with something awesome and positive, because normally we think if something awesome happened, well, yeah, I might not think I'm stronger because I got a promotion, or I might not think I'm stronger because I had a really great birthday party. I might just think it was great. I don't usually think in terms of am I weaker or am I stronger, and I think the idea here that we could at least many of us understand the idea that those who perceive this to apply only to negative situations is it's not really logical that if something super great happens and I'm sitting around thinking about am I stronger or weaker because of it. Well, normally you just think it's great. So the idea here is not like the opposite, right? Something negative happened, or in the absence of something negative, nothing happened. So there's a debate between what's the worst thing: is it getting fired, or is it just staying forever in the same monotonous, low-paying, repetitive place? I don't know, but it's the absence of something great, right? So it could either be something bad, or it could be just nothing at all, just mindless repetition. But the idea is that I'm not looking at something that I would in any way characterize as good. And the idea here is, yeah, but I'm not dead, right? It didn't kill me. And now I'm stronger by it. As a consequence of this thing happening, look at me. Look how much stronger I am. I'm resilient. My skin is tougher. Sometimes, not just figuratively, but literally. A lot of people who work, work with their hands or work with their bodies in physical jobs, they will. They'll get, their skin literally will become, thicker with calluses. because they're out constantly utilizing their body, especially in the elements or something of that nature. So, we can almost understand, well, yeah, literally their skin is thicker, or at least it's calloused and able to handle, the elements a little bit better maybe than somebody who has very little exposure to that type of environment. All right, that's something we can sort of perceive. The question is, should we look at life and think, okay, something not great happened. It could be, in fact, just repetition, boredom, monotony, or it could be even, something bad, right? So then I'm unemployed and I have no money, or I thought that my spouse cared about me, but turns out they lied and they've cheated on me and left me, or the person I cared most about in the world that was so special to me, has suffered or died, and so now I have all this negative consequence. And so the idea is here that I guess we're trying to see, should I look at things that happen, that are not great, and think, you know what, though, didn't kill me, still here, and beyond the fact that I'm alive, right, I'm still breathing, and my heart's still beating, is look at this, I'm stronger, I'm better for this. This is interesting. As I was going through the show notes and thinking about this concept and trying to come up with my position on the episode, I went and read some psychological articles explaining different sort of psychological experiments or studies to try to see, well, what happens? Let's say, basically kind of looking at it from their perspective, let's take the person who's had multiple things happen in their life that are not great, that sort of categorically many people would determine to be a negative, right? So, death, disease or illness, poverty, abuse, neglect, and so we'll take those people and sort of look at them and kind of determine, does the person who had, 15 of these really, horrible things happen, are they stronger? And is that strength an asset? I've shared that I've had the opportunity in my life to work with a variety of people, and of course my own life experiences, but I certainly in the legal system I've worked with people whose family of origin situation is so full of problems that the government actually will come in and take away a minor child. They'll take them away from either their biological parents or their caregivers, whoever they're living with, due to abuse, neglect, things of that nature. And it happens very rarely statistically. So the government doesn't go to, every 3 houses down and they just take all the kids. I mean, that's not, to the best of my understanding, at all what happens in the United States. But people who get caught up in these systems, meaning they do have a case, perceive that the government's just bothering you all the time. But typically these things start because somebody reports it, and it's usually not the child. So it's usually somebody at the child's school who says, I saw bruises, I saw, the child had a lot of injuries, I think the child might be physically abused, or I was witnessing behavior from the child. I think the child may be sexually abused. Sometimes the report comes from mandatory reporting entities, meaning there's laws in the United States and many parts of the country, if not most, where if someone goes to a hospital or a medical treatment facility and the medical provider realizes, my goodness, I think this person's a victim of violence or sexual abuse, then they will call the government agency. They're actually required to. It's mandatory that they report it. So it's usually an adult from somewhere, not always, but usually an adult from somewhere. It could be just a concerned neighbor or just whoever that, calls the authorities, and the authorities come out and start trying to decide, do an investigation, and they have all these, protocols and whatnot. And the question is that person stronger, and I guess is that strength an asset? So when I looked at some of the sort of broadly disseminated psychological research in this area, of course, there's some research that says, well, yeah, right? You get the same idea of like getting that callus, right? Your hands are calloused and kind of, but you do have, the ability that's a strength, maybe an asset in some situations, depending on what you're doing. But a lot of what I looked at, in my own personal opinion, is this: the more that you pile on in one person's life of these really negative situations, at some point, and I would argue sooner rather than later, this idea that they become stronger is not accurate. And I'm arguing, since this is a Myth Warriors episode and we're trying to determine is this a myth, I'm going to argue that it actually is. There's interesting research that I was looking at, sort of comparing people who pretty much have nothing, that we could objectively call really bad happen. So they've never been abused, they've never been neglected, they've never been sexually assaulted, they've never had, they've never had situations where they didn't have enough food or nutrition, and you compare that person who's kind of had almost nothing bad happen, and then you look at the person who's had a whole bunch of bad things happen. So their family of origin was not safe. They were abused, physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually. They were removed. Sometimes they go to better situations and they can be in a safer environment. Sometimes they go to situations that are is equally bad or sometimes even worse. So who's better off, right? Who's stronger? I think that one of the things that struck me in sort of reading through some of this very simplistic, explanation of trying to look at the idea, try to examine what we're doing, right? They were doing it from different psychological perspectives, or at least they were interpreting the data from different research from this perspective. One of the things I read that was interesting is they were talking about people who train animals, and specifically dogs, for military or law enforcement. So often the dog is using their sensory sense of smell, and they're trained to smell out drugs, or they're trained to smell things that might be used in explosives, things of this nature. And so they were saying, the handler who works with the trained dogs was basically saying, you might think that a great animal, a great dog for us to use to train in law enforcement or to train in the military would be this a dog that's lived out on the street, the dog that's was a stray, was abandoned, that's been out there with no food, no water, and just sort of fought their way through life, and was found somewhere, and now we rescued that dog, and that dog would be tough, right? Like, that's the dog you want to go deal with somebody who's maybe going out to see, potentially there might be resistance from somebody from law enforcement or from the military. So they were saying maybe you would think that dog would be a great dog, right? That dog has no fear. The dog's been out, and knows how tough life is, right? That dog, oh yeah, I've been abandoned and almost killed who knows how many times, right? I was emaciated and I've been attacked physically, but yeah, I'm here. That maybe that would be the best dog, that you want to train and have as your as your canine companion in these types of work environments. But the person was saying that's absolutely not true. that basically they were saying that the person who's been through so much of trauma is traumatized. The dog that's been through trauma is traumatized, and because they're so traumatized, they're unpredictable, right? Which makes sense. One of the things, and we've talked about it in some other settings, and certainly will continue to, is the sort of the lingering ramifications of trauma. Whether it's you're at work and you were in a law enforcement or military environment, or you're just in a non you're in a retail environment and something awful happened. There was a workplace violence incident. What happens to people who suffer trauma? And the idea is that for many people, there are long, lingering manifestations of the trauma. And so the idea that the animal trainer was saying, look, I don't want that dog who's been out and been through a lot of trauma, because that dog is so difficult for me to predict how they're going to react to something. And why is the dog so difficult? Well, we're not dogs, right? We're not able to get in their heads necessarily and ask them and interview them. But the best of our understanding is that, the consequence of being treated poorly, of maltreatment, often is that the person or the dog who was the victim is never really confident or sure. They're not calm, because they're not really sure if something that seems like it might be safe for a little bit is going to turn violent. And so they might react in ways that you would think that doesn't make any sense. There was no threat there at all. But to the dog that's been traumatized, often they're trying to protect themselves, but their world is unstable. So they react in ways that may seem unstable, but it's rational to them because bad things have happened where they didn't expect it. This is not the greatest analogy, and I know for all the animal behaviorists and everyone else in the hard sciences, I oversimplify things, but in the context of the purpose of these programs, there's a reason for it. You see it with people who've been through multiple traumas or ongoing traumas in life. Yeah, probably the person who's had maybe, one or two things happen in their life, that aren't great. It gives them a little bit of resilience. But the more you keep, piling on that person's plate, sort of their plate in life, oh, okay, you had this family of origin challenge. Oh, okay. And there was a physical abuse. Okay. And then also on top of that, a little bit later in life, you had sexual abuse. Okay. And then a little bit later than that, you had a situation where you had, you were just living on the streets with no steady food and no shelter. The more you pile on someone's plate, you don't just tend to get this stronger, more successful, happier, more joyful person. You tend to get, in many instances, if not most, somebody who is constantly trying to predict what's going to happen, and they've had so many things happen that were traumatic. They think they're protecting themselves, and they might say and do things that seem odd and counterproductive to somebody on the outside. They think, why are they so sensitive? Why did they overreact like that? All I did was say, I'm sorry. I bumped into them, and they acted like they're going to hit me. Well, maybe they did that because they've experienced in their lives where people, sort of acted like they were bumping into them, and then they really, turned around and beat them up. And maybe that was someone that was close to them, or a relative or a caregiver. And so it sort of changes your ability to make decisions being exposed to continual trauma. And again, back to the dog trainer argument, is they said the best dog that they want to train to come work with them in the military or law enforcement or anything else, they have different industries and businesses, is the dog that was, calm, healthy, and very stable. And typically that's one that they've raised from, the earliest, from the time the pup was born, ideally, because then they know that they've never been in these environments where it's been traumatized. And that is a predictable dog to work with, because the dog has trust, right? The dog trusts the humans, the dog trusts the other dogs, and the dog is easier to be able to communicate their needs, and they can train them, and the dog is reliable. That's because the dog feels safe. With humans, the more traumatized we are, then the less safe we feel. Now, are we able as humans to make changes in our life and make decisions and say, okay, I'm going to obtain whatever skills or education or certification that I need so that I can go out and earn a living and protect myself and get safety and my shelter and make sure that I'm not around, abusive and violent people as an adult? Yeah, we can do that. And many people do. But what they're typically doing is, as they're getting older, is they're creating that safe environment, but they usually also have pretty serious boundaries about trust and who they let into their home or who they, share their feelings with. It's because they've come through trauma. And what they're trying to do is stop putting more trauma on their plate. And so this myth, and I'm arguing a myth, the idea, well, it didn't kill me, I'm still here, look how much stronger I am. I think maybe for one or two or a couple of things in life, well, yeah, right? Because if you've never had anything negative happen, and, in your whole life nothing's ever happened negative, and then one time, you hurt your finger, and it hurt really bad, and you cried, and you had to go to the doctor, and it's the only time you've ever been to the doctor, and it hurt really bad, then, yeah, you might seem like you're overreacting because you've never had anything horrible. That's the most horrible thing that ever happened to you is the time you hurt your finger. So, that may be somebody who doesn't have the best resilience or maybe the calmest ability to adjust to change, right? So there's that part of it, somebody who never has anything happen. But absent that, which is, somewhat rare, the rest of us, I think we owe it to ourselves to make decisions in our lives so that we do not add anything else traumatic or painful if we have any control. So, yes, can we be going about our lives, making good choices? Oh, I'm eating well, I feel good about myself, I'm working hard. Oh, my gosh, there was an earthquake. Well, sure. But if you were doing all those other things, right, then even though the horrible bad thing happened, the earthquake, but since you had the job, you had a safe place to live, you had some insurance, you had a little bit of savings. So, yeah, the bad thing still happened, but you had some other decisions that you'd made ahead of time that made the consequence less negative. If you're in a situation where literally you don't have anywhere to live and you're homeless, and then there's an earthquake, then it's still equally horrible, the earthquake, but your situation was already so precarious. So my argument is, don't buy into this. Don't say to yourself, well, that was horrible, but well, I'm stronger. I'm not going to look at any of my choices. I'm not going to examine any decisions that I make. My last 3 marriages, ended in horrible, disagreement and painful divorce, but, I'm going for marriage number 4, even though I've only known this person, for 3 weeks, but they seem great. No! No. Stop and look at what your choices are. Look at your life. Do you feel that you created safety? Do you feel that you've created options? And if something bad happens, whether it's economically or emotionally or just your physical space, if you have bad things happen, of course, none of us can control natural disasters, and a lot of the things that happen are totally beyond our control. But there are people who get into destructive patterns where they keep making choices and really bad things happen, but they refuse to change their decision-making process because they keep, the argument is, hey, it didn't kill me and it made me stronger. Did it? So as we close this show, I strongly encourage you to look at your life. When you talk to other people and they start telling you, well, it made me stronger. Okay, well, yeah, if it's how did we all react to the flash flood that happened in our town, last week, okay, let's have a discussion. But if it's someone who is telling you about, my goodness, they drank alcohol and then they drove a vehicle, but, and they were scared they might be arrested, but they weren't. And so they're going to do it again. That's it's true it didn't kill you, and maybe you didn't even kill anybody else. But how about discarding this idea that it's making you stronger as a myth, which is what I've proposed, and working on a plan that what doesn't kill you, you're either going to become wiser, so you're going to learn from it, or you're just going to be grateful that you're not dead, and you're going to continue on your path, just surpassing your goals and practicing the joyful art of business with safe, pragmatic plans to try to create the best possible outcome for yourself. I really, really implore you to think about this. Again, as we close, my argument is this is a myth. It might not have killed me, but piling more and more and more and more negative outcomes on my plate in life is not necessarily going to get me to a point where I'm stronger, I'm happier, I'm more resilient, I'm more joyful. It's probably just going to exhaust me and get me so traumatized at some point I start making even, really, really negative decisions. So, again, treat yourself well, be kind to yourself, create the safest, most comfortable environment you possibly can, and let's move forward in that direction. If you have any questions or always to stay in contact, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com. I appreciate you so much for joining me today.